music. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 591, recorded on Friday, November 4th, 2016. Live from the Maryland STEM Festival! I'm Dr. Kiki, and today we are going to fill your heads with a tilted moon, cosmic pasta, and some acoustic reverberations. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The world is watching. Not the World Series, that's over with now. Not the election, though that's coming soon. But the minds of science are watching. Watching the skies, our solar system, our galaxy, and the universe beyond. Watching our physical, molecular, atomic, and subatomic composition. Watching our climate, our creatures, our flora, and our home. And the science minds are watching us. Our health, our genes, our microbial biome, our mental makeup. So many watchers, yet so much more to see. The world is watching. The next generation of our solar tilt your head this way and observe another episode of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I wanna learn everything. I wanna fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I see. I wanna know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And good science to everyone out there, especially our live audience here at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, Maryland at the Maryland STEM Festival opening ceremonies.
Yeah. And this is actually my regular live in studio audience. I actually flew them all out here with me.
Yeah,
I noticed you didn't bring anybody.
Yeah, well, I gotta get a few more Patreon sponsors first.
Justin carries the show as usual.
Physically in his backpack, duffel bag, I don't know. Oh, today we have a great show ahead. Welcome everyone to another episode of This Week in Science. We are so happy to be out here in Maryland, and we have very special thanks, huge thanks to the people that have brought us out here to the aquarium for hosting us. Thank you so much to all the people who have helped to put this production together, and to Phil Regowsky, the director of the Maryland STEM Festival, for actually inviting us in the first place.
Very nice.
That started the whole ball
That's
rolling.
an important step.
That was very important. Yes, so what are we going to be doing here? We are going to be talking about science, and in honor of being in Baltimore, our special Baltimore show, we're bringing Maryland to the center stage. So we've got science, news, and interviews that focus on the local area. We're going to be speaking with someone from NASA. We've also got someone from the aquarium to speak with us, and a Baltimore musician. And I've got a story about the moon. Justin, what did you bring?
I've got the cosmic pasta and a robot laser sniffing thing.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Right. Okay, Blair, what's in the animal corner?
I brought confused fishes, and if we have time, we'll also talk about teeny tiny ocean teamwork and spiders for dinner.
Yum. I know a spider's for dinner, it's accidental sometimes, but...
No, that's midnight snack while you're sleeping.
Right. All right, everyone. Let's move it forward with the first story for the day. How about some research that crosses the country from UC Davis to the University of Maryland? Some really interesting research published in Nature about our very own moon. It's pretty exciting. So, how many people have heard about the hypothesis of how the moon formed? That there was, right? Raise your hands. Something formed the moon, right? Long time ago, there was an approximately Mars-sized body in the solar system that rammed into Earth. They called it Theia. And so Theia wasn't very nice, rammed into Earth, vaporizing everything and setting everything into pebbles and bits of dust and lots of little bits that eventually, over time, became the Earth and the Moon. Well, so we know that the Earth is slightly canted in its orbit around the Sun. And the Moon is also slightly canted in its orbit around the Earth. And the hypothesis of how everything got going, the physical forces that made this happen, the old idea is that, that the Moon just kind of was out there away from the Earth and just eventually coagulated into its solid form that it is, that we see today. But that hypothesis never explained its 5-degree tilt that's different from the Earth. If everything was spinning the same way, why aren't the Earth and the Moon both at the same tilt? Why is that? Big mystery, right? Well, anyway, these researchers from UC Davis and also from the University of Maryland, and the researchers here in Maryland, Doug Hamilton, say that there was a debris ring, that there was a giant impact that blasted off a huge amount of material that formed the Moon. This material would have formed a ring of debris first, and then the ring would have aggregated to form the Moon. And so the tilt is very unusual. Until now, there hasn't been a good explanation, says Hamilton. But we can understand it if the Earth had a more dramatic early history than previously suspected. And so the idea that they're proposing is that the Earth hasn't always been at the tilt that it is now with respect to the Sun. That because of the Moon, it used to be that that the impact with Theia actually made the Earth like off axis by like 75 degrees. That was massively off axis. And that because of the Moon, and the Moon moving away, spinning on its own, and moving away from the Earth, that it actually pulled the Earth to the tilt that it currently sits at, and also the gravitational force between the Moon and the Earth, and the spin also tilted the Moon. And so there's a dance between the Earth and the Moon that has taken billions of years of them pulling on each other to make them sit in the sky the way that we currently experience it. And so
that's pretty awesome. Although I don't know, I think maybe it's just because I'm sort of used to having a moon. I think it would be kind of cool to have a ring instead.
A ring of debris, like Saturn.
Like Saturn.
Yeah.
Like we could look out and to be this sort of arching ring that would sort of go from one end of the horizon to the other. That'd be pretty awesome.
Well, maybe we would have had to have been a bigger planet, a bigger impact.
But then our poles would have been in different places.
Yeah.
And then there's the tides. It's a whole mess.
And
There's a
then
whole
maybe
thing. There's a
life
whole
never
lot of-
would have started on Earth in the first place.
Yeah, just watch it.
Better to have the moon. That's fine.
I like the Moon, okay?
I like the moon a lot more now that I realize all life depended on its being there.
Yeah. All right, well, that does it for my first story. With that, I would like to invite our first guest up to join us today. We are joined by National Aquarium Director of Conservation, Laura Bankey, and her favorite animal is any species of sea turtle.
Fair enough.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So it's really great to have you here. Can you tell us a bit about what is your role as Director of Conservation here at the aquarium?
Absolutely. So first of all, welcome to the National Aquarium.
you.
We're so glad to have you here. We are 35 years old this year, so we just celebrated our birthday in August. And our mission is to inspire the conservation of the world's aquatic treasures. So that started 35 years ago, and it really starts with the 50 million people or so that we've brought into this building, and we've shown amazing habitats and amazing animals, and shown them what it's really like to have a pristine blue planet. But several years ago, we also decided that that was wonderful, but we'd like to take it a little bit further. So we decided that really taking conservation outside of our building, going beyond education inspiring the people that come into our building and the people that touch us to do things in their own community as far as stewardship for this blue planet is where we want it to be. We're continuing to grow those efforts, but a lot of my work in particular revolves around getting folks interested in community conservation. We do habitat restoration. We look at neighborhoods and cities and see where they can improve their quality of life and create kind of a stewardship in their neighborhoods as well.
So, coming from the perspective of the aquarium as part of the community, do you do most of your work locally in Maryland, or do you have a broader reach nationally, internationally? I mean, you talk about stewardship of the blue planet. I mean, are you focused there or locally or both?
It's a little bit of both. Obviously, we are here and we're really part of the heart of the city of Baltimore. It's an urban community, and we're trying to be true to those urban roots. If you look around us, we're surrounded by water, but we're also surrounded by a city. So what it means to be a conservation organization in an urban area and really kind of focus on the water aspect. So we are really focusing in the city and the neighborhoods and the people of the city. That being said, we are reaching out. The Chesapeake Bay in this particular area is a very big focus for us, but we're beginning to reach out even further. We have exhibits from all around the world. We'd like to be able to do conservation action related to those exhibits. Currently, we have a project that's really trying to support a national marine sanctuary off the coast of the Mid-Atlantic in our Atlantic Ocean, and there's lots of other things that we have planned.
Yeah, and locally in the Chesapeake Bay area, what kind of stuff are you focused on doing?
So it ranges between habitat restoration. If you're familiar with this area, a lot of the important habitats, the forests and the marshlands and the tidal wetlands, have been destroyed for various reasons over the several hundred years where that we've lived in this area. So we're trying to bring those back where they can be brought back. But places like Baltimore City that is very urbanized, but it's also,
Get rid of the buildings.
No, we're not going to do that.
Bring back the marshlands.
I was cautioned against swimming in the harbor or even touching the water. Is it really that?
It's an urban area, so it has the urban problem. So after a rain, anything that's landing on the city streets gets washed into the harbor. So that's something that we're actually trying to focus on.
Is it actually channeled it? Like the city runoff goes to the harbor, or is it just happens to run down the street kind of a thing?
All runoff in this area goes to its closest stream.
Wow.
So eventually it does make it to the harbor or to the local river or the Chesapeake Bay.
So you can see a direct impact from a rainfall then.
Absolutely. So after a big rainfall, we'll see if there's debris on the streets, that all gets washed into the nearest stream, and we will see that in the harbor.
Wow.
And that includes dog waste. It includes pesticides that we're putting on our lawns. It includes everything. So that's part of our priority, is to try to engage the public in changing some of those behaviors, but also trying to fix and measure and mitigate for some of that. So the new exhibit that we're working on really has to do with how do we clean up this harbor, how to restore some of what we call ecosystem services that were here when it was a natural harbor, but doing it in a way that's not only beneficial to the community as far as, there's educational opportunities around that, but it's also, it will literally clean up the harbor.
Yeah, it seems like you have a beautiful physical representation of that, because in most places, most cities across the world, really, your runoff goes somewhere.
Yeah.
It went down the drain, now it's gone.
Right, out of sight, out of mind.
And to be able to connect what's happening 10 blocks away to the harbor itself, that's a fantastic teaching tool on top of everything else.
It is, and we try to use it to our advantage.
And is the harbor a fish nursery, as I know so many of kind of estuary type locations are?
So one of the things that we're doing in the harbor prior to this cleanup effort is really trying to measure what's here, what the kind of baseline data is. So we're looking at all the animals that we see here in the harbor. We're doing some studies with some partners at University of Maryland and some other universities in the area. And we have this thing called a biohut that's out there. And it's basically a little kind of nursery area. And we monitor that once a month throughout the year, and we're finding eels and pipefish and things. There's so much life in this harbor. People, they look at it and they're scared, and they don't really understand the value and the importance that this place has, because there really is a lot of life here, and if we clean it up just a little, it has a tremendous opportunity to bring back even more.
Great.
Excellent.
And so we go out of the harbor
that's
and
what I was
through
gonna
the
do.
bay.
Let's take it out.
We're
Take it
going
out
out
to
to
the
the
sea.
Atlantic,
Yes.
and we see Baltimore Canyon. So
Mhm.
this is an underwater canyon. Do we know very much about this canyon at this point?
We know a little. You were talking about kind of the history of the world, literally, the history of the world earlier. So if you look at a map of the United States, and then you kind of look at the underwater portion of that map, along the edge of most of the U.S., but particularly along the edge of the mid-Atlantic, there's a continental shelf. So it's a very shallow area that kind of rims our coastline. Now, millions of years ago, that was actually above water. When the water level was lower than it is today, that was above water. So when the rivers came through the landscape, they did what they always do, and they erode away parts of the land. And in the mid-Atlantic, what they've done is they've created a series of submarine canyons off our mid-Atlantic coast. We have somebody from Goddard here as well that's going to talk about space, but here at the aquarium we talk about deep sea ocean exploration as the next frontier. There's very little bit of the ocean that's been studied, very little bit has been understood. We're just beginning to understand about the habitats and the animals that live down there, and the importance that those places have in kind of the larger ecology of the Atlantic and global oceans.
And how much of it, I mean, we're at this point where we're going to start mining. We're going to start, there's a movement now by a group to map the entire ocean floor of the Earth. It's going to take a very concerted effort over many years to be able to do it. But I mean, it's like you said, it's an uncharted frontier. For a canyon like Baltimore Canyon and other deep sea canyons, what kind of life can we expect down in those deep places, dark places?
So the answer will actually surprise you, because what most of the important habitat in the canyon itself relates to deep sea corals. So the corals that we think of when we think of the ocean, they're in tropical areas, they're in crystal clear water, it's warm, lots of sunlight, it's one of the requirements of those corals to grow. But these are 1,500 meters deep. There's no sunlight getting to these. But there are species of corals called deep sea corals. So they live in very dark, very deep places. The corals that we're used to have an algae that lives
The zooplankton.
with,
Do these corals not have that?
they have a bacteria
Interesting.
that, instead of obviously the algae and the corals we're used to, are photosynthetic. So they take the sunlight, and that's why corals need clear water. That's one of their requirements. But the bacteria that are living in symbiosis with the deep sea corals are chemosynthetic. So they're taking the chemistry of the water and creating nutrients for the coral animals out there. The only issue is that it's much less efficient, so they grow much slower. Which is fine, except that if they're damaged, then it's a pretty important consequence.
Right. And so what is the National Aquarium doing with respect to research and conservation of these habitats?
So in Baltimore Canyon in particular, we are supporting an effort to nominate the Baltimore Canyon as the country's first urban national marine sanctuary. So a national marine sanctuary is a marine protected area under NOAA's National Marine Sanctuaries Office. We're considering it an urban national marine sanctuary because it is offshore. It's not easy to visit, and if you do, you're in a ship and you see water. So it's a little bit hard to kind of really relate to the canyon. So what our vision is we're going to use technology, and it grows by leaps and bounds every day, to take the wonders of the canyon and bring it back to our urban audiences here in Baltimore and then ultimately other places. But we have a tremendous tech center here in Baltimore that has the ability to kind of dream big with us. So being able to take the wonders of the canyon and use it in the STEM fair is the perfect opportunity to talk about this, is really engage our youth, and particularly our urban youth, in deep sea exploration and underwater research and just using technology for ocean exploration.
Yeah, everybody's into drones right now.
Yeah.
Sub drones.
AUVs.
AVs. Right.
So I have kind of a sticky question with marine protected areas and national marine sanctuaries. So it works a lot better on land because things are very well separated, right? But in the oceans, there's a lot of exchange, right?
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
how do you thoroughly protect an area, protect this vital space when the waters around that space are not?
So when we say protected, we don't mean nothing can happen in that sanctuary. In fact, it's almost the opposite. We're suggesting that some activities absolutely can remain going on in that sanctuary as long as they don't harm the resource that we decide is the important resource to protect. So, for example, the deep sea corals or these methane seeps, which are another interesting habitat down there. If you want to take your ship and sail over the top of the canyon, that's not going to harm the deep sea corals. We don't have a problem with that. So it's not like there's going to be a wall and you have to go around and
Build a
and
wall.
whatnot. Yeah, no, sorry, should have brought that
A
up.
very lonely park ranger out on a buoy. Sort of
Right, don't go
Stuff and
there.
everything.
There's not going to be a line in the water. There's a lot of activities are still going to be allowed in the sanctuary as long as they're consistent with the protection of the habitat.
And so we're coming to the end of our time here. Can you tell us a bit about how you're getting people involved, how people can help to get the Baltimore Canyon preserved? Like,
Absolutely.
What are we doing, and
What
how
are we
can
doing?
people help?
So we're working to put in a nomination package for the National Marine Sanctuary status, and that includes getting a lot of people interested and invested in the idea of kind of creating this urban national marine sanctuary. So it's working with partners out there that can bring educational resources or technology resources or research resources. We have researchers that are studying corals and fish. So bringing those people together to help develop a vision for what this place could be as a protected area, but also getting just general support from the public. So we're doing outreach in a very targeted area, but we're also trying to just let folks understand how important this place is and the value of it being protected. So we have a website. If you go to aqua.org/Baltimore Canyon, you can learn more about that. And there's an online petition. It'll be really great if everybody could sign that. And that will allow us to kind of add weight to the nomination package. It says, this has really gotten support by a large number of people, and we consider this as a nationally significant place and worthy of protection.
So as long as you live in America, you can sign the petition?
You can live anywhere.
You can live
sign the
anywhere.
petition.
There we go.
It's one global ocean, right?
Right.
That's fantastic.
It's not being preserved just for the local area. It's being preserved for
Humankind.
humankind. That is good. Thank you so much for your time
No problem.
today.
Thank you.
You do valuable work here. Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to walking around.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I want to drive one of those underwater vehicles.
Yeah.
Can I have the remote control? It would be so good. All right, everybody, if you just tuned in, you are watching or listening to This Week in Science. Justin, what you got?
Oh, pop quiz. What do pasta, parking garages, endoplasmic reticulum, and neutron stars have in common? Answer?
They're all in the universe.
No, they have nothing in common. These are all completely different things. However, that is until University of California at Santa Barbara physicist Greg Huber stumbled upon the work of Indiana University nuclear physicist Charles Horowitz. According to the research they recently published together, neutron stars and cell cytoplasm have something in common: structures that resemble multi-story parking garages. So Huber and colleagues explored the biophysics of these shapes, helices that connect stacks of evenly spaced sheets in a cellular organelle called the endoplasmic reticulum. Huber and his colleagues dubbed them Terasaki ramps after their discoverer, Mark Terasaki, a cell biologist, University of Connecticut. So he thought that these sort of structures that he was seeing in the cell were unique to organic life. It's these little tears, and when they kind of connect to top and bottom. And then he sees the work of Horwitz, right? And Horwitz is studying the crust of a neutron star, the inner crust, what the physics that's taking place there. And the images that he presented looked very much like what he was seeing, these parking garages. It looked so similar that he contacted him and they started working in collaboration to see why. And these two vastly different systems, completely different scales. The ratio is over 1 million different scales, right? Magnitudes, right? This is magnitudes of difference. But what's the really large thing in this? It's actually the cell. Because what the physicists are studying is the what's going on with neutron protons in the crust of the supernova. So it's actually what's taking place in the supernova is a super tiny thing. And the cell is actually this sort of massive structure in comparison.
Okay, so they're looking at neutrons and protons in the structure of the neutron star.
Yes.
Which is tinier, magnitudes of scale tinier than
10
the
to the sixth magnitudes.
smaller than the endoplasmic reticulum in the cell body.
But
Got
the
it.
structures they're finding, and so I guess
Wild.
the nuclear physicists have a terminology that they used already for this. They called them nuclear pasta, because the tubes, which were the Terasaki ramps, they call spaghetti, and then the parallel sheets they call lasagna. Right? This is how they've been referring to this for a while.
Yeah, so in the endoplasmic reticulum, it's been the molecular structure for years has been known to kind of be this sheets and strings, kind of like you're talking about. Like you have the open space, the cisternae, and the sheets of the endoplasmic reticulum, and then the little support structures, the struts
Lasagna
that hold
spaghetti.
together. Yeah,
Lasagna spaghetti, right there.
There we go.
That's it.
Lasagna spaghetti.
So there
Interesting.
is one of these things that we talk about every once in a while. It's the human ability to see patterns in things. Whether there's actually a there, they don't know. But they say it's very, very interesting. And even though the forces at work in both of these systems are completely different, they're now looking into why it is that they have such a similarity. Because that similarity itself seems a mystery. So they say this is just the beginning of something that they're looking into. They're going to be delving further into this as they go. But it says they say that there may be something about the energy within a contained system that forces this shape to appear, and we may see it other places as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it has to do with physics.
Yeah, but although the physics of these two systems being so completely different.
But not
somehow,
necessarily. At some scale, the interactions between the particles,
Yeah.
between the components. There's something
starts to have
look
a
familiar,
yeah.
similar. Cool.
It's really a good reminder that across scientific disciplines we should all be talking to each other, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not a
Right.
biology person, you're not an astrophysics person, we're all science people, and the more we can collaborate, we see patterns.
Yeah, it was this somebody. He goes. I called Chuck and asked if he was aware that we had seen these structures in cells and had come up with a model for them. Said Huber. It was news to him, so I realized then that there could be some fruitful interaction. Sort of putting it very fancy.
It's all about contacting those collaborators. That's right.
Yeah.
Got something else?
Yeah, this is a breakthrough bioindicator. Billy is best bet for next Mars-bound bot sensors, says Branimir Blagojevich, NASA technologist at Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. Billy is also known as Bioindicator LiDAR Instrument. It's a fluorescence-based LiDAR, so it shoots the air with lasers. Pew-pew! And these are shortwave ultraviolet lasers, and when they hit stuff in the air, they emit a long wave in response. And this long wave can tell you pretty much everything about what it is that's emitting the wave, based on the length of the wave and the frequencies that it's at. So he had worked on this before joining Goddard space flight for the military, using this to sort of use as a remote sensor detector for if there was say, something hazardous, a chemical put out into the air, toxins in the air, that sort of thing. It could pick this up, just sort of monitoring air above a city or in an important area where they're doing work, right? But he realized this can actually be used to detect biological signatures. So he's developing this now to be placed on the next Mars rover. And some of the things it can do is there's terrain that is kind of difficult for rovers to get to, but you can shoot a laser anywhere you have line of sight. So if there's a ridge line that looks too tough to go across, but there's plumes that you want to detect, you don't have to run the rover all the way over there. You just fire lasers in that direction. And going forward, this might be something that they can actually then use in a probe, in a satellite. So you can send a probe around a planetary body, and by using the same method from space without actually touching down, discover whether or not there's organic material there.
Yeah, fluorescence is an interesting property, so that the molecules get energized by the energy in the laser and then emit light, and then that light can be detected. And the different light frequencies they're different signatures for different chemical compounds. And so then you can start really determining what's there. Is it good? Is it bad? And I really hope that if they do put this on a rover on Mars, they do add a speaker that goes pew, pew, pew. Somebody has to do that someday. Come on.
I just assume that's what's going on in mission control when they're hitting the buttons.
Okay, fire the laser. Pew, pew, pew. It's all good. Oh, and on that note, I would like to bring in our next guest from NASA, Dr. Robert Gabrys. He's the director of NASA Goddard's Office of Education at Goddard Space Flight Center.
Welcome.
Welcome. And I don't know, I was going to ask you, what is your favorite spacecraft?
Osiris Rex,
Osiris Rex. Why is that?
because it's going to go up, land on an asteroid, get a piece of that asteroid, and bring it back to Earth.
Nice.
It's gonna be awesome. It's
If
those.
you want to think of the wonders of mankind and the power of the human mind to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean we've sent missions to comets, to asteroids. We've been to Rosetta. We've been to there's the Rosetta mission to 67P Gerasimov Cheremenko, which I can't say all the Russian names. We've been, what was the other Japanese mission?
Hayabusa.
Hayabusa.
Itakawa.
Itakawa. That's right. I mean we've done this, but we've never had a return mission.
Right.
That's a feat. I love these long shot missions. Let's do it. Yes. So tell me about your job as director of the Office of Education at Goddard. What do you do?
So my job is extremely exciting, because my background before I came to NASA was being the assistant state superintendent of schools for the state of Maryland.
Okay.
So at that time, I was responsible for all the accountability and the testing program. So anybody who graduated from a Maryland high school had to take these tests that I was working on. And so when we built that system, then I did a presentation at NASA, and they talked to me about coming to work there. And I thought it would really be interesting, because when you work in the State Department of Ed, you always talk about doing things by mandate.
Because you have to.
Yeah. You just go to the state board or somebody, and they pass on a rule, and you got to do it, right?
Right.
When you go to NASA, all of a sudden, it's the idea that carries the weight. And so it was kind of exciting to look at, well, if I go there, what I'll have to do is figure out how to help science teachers deliver the science that we put on all those tests that we then created items for. And how do you do that? The support system. So we build support systems. NASA, by definition, in education is not like the U.S. Department of Education. Its responsibility is to take the NASA unique content that we're dealing with and translate it into education uses. So in effect, students can be motivated. In other words, if you were looking at, like we have a total solar eclipse coming up next year, we don't teach people about eclipses. They can go to books and get that. The real question is, what are we going to learn about eclipses? Because there's going to be a solar eclipse.
Right.
If we're talking about going to Mars, it's what are we intending to learn by going to Mars? And that's what's used to excite students and teachers. And so it's not textbook knowledge, but it's building off of it. So.
Yeah, for Mars, we just want to know if we can live there, right?
And we want to know if somebody was there before.
Or if someone was there before us, right?
And actually, on the topic you were just talking about,
Yeah.
Goddard has a really part in the rover that's there now, because what Goddard built was, in effect, a chemistry lab that is inside the rover. And so that rover, when it's going around, is actually drilling and pulling in materials. That chemistry lab is not storing that in order for something to happen. It's actually analyzing it
In real time. and sending
in
it
real
back.
time and sending the results back,
Yeah,
which is phenomenal.
do you know what the chemistry lab does? Is it looking at it with light? Is it burning it? Because I know a lot in chemistry, a lot of times you want to know what a compound is. You burn it up, and you look at what is emitted and how it's emitted.
It's
as
actually
the burning
looking for all those signatures,
Yeah.
that, because that's what's going to tell them. It's probably more of the light kind of laser thing. that
Yeah.
they say. You're going to end up looking at what are the components that are there by looking at their signatures, because we know that. So it's kind of an unknown piece, but it may be one of the most valuable things about the rover going around to answer the question, well, are we going to be able to live there? What's there?
Yeah.
What could have been there before? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking ice cores in the Earth, and you see the information's all stored in the core. You could do the same thing on Mars. It's there. You just have to go down.
Yeah, we just have to create the vehicles to go to Mars,
Right.
to drill the cores, to be able to learn exactly what is there.
Or to do those lasers that you're talking about.
Right,
Shooting that
or to
laser.
shoot the lasers. Pew pew pew. Are we doing?
So is part of this trying to are we talking about getting like lasers in the hands of school children, so that they can sort of run some of these experiments in their local schools and see what's taking place on Mars?
Yeah, actually what we do with school children, particularly within the state of Maryland, because we're here,
Yeah.
we actually run programs, take high school kids, for instance, because unlike when we were in school, they now get out early, right? School's over at 2 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
We have programs for kids where they come to Goddard 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, at the end of that high school day.
I want to go back to
I
high
know.
school in
Can I-
Maryland.
can I go?
Can I come?
I never actually finished. I think I'm good for another year or two.
I never actually went and picked up my PhD paper. I mean,
How does one
Go
enroll at
backwards.
43?
So when they do that, then we assign them, because it's 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, have to be
what are they going to
Put
do?
'em to work.
What are they
Yeah.
working on?
for a semester or a year.
Yeah.
So it's not dabbling. And they are assigned to these missions.
Nice.
So like working with the guy who's talking about lasers. And they are working on that research.
Wow.
And they don't move around. They're on a single project, so that when we launch some satellites, those kids have been very instrumental in the fact that they're built.
And they're working, yeah, they're
And
working
they're
on
working
it. They're
hand
working.
in glove with the mentors.
Nice.
So even you're right that we get that. I get that reaction all the time, like from graduate students who say, "What are you wasting that on high school kids?" Well, I want to do that.
So my very first job was during high school, and they'd matched me up with the orthopedics department at UC Davis. And what they had me working on was something related to a project with NASA.
Right.
We had monkey bone and different types of plastics, and we were breaking it to see what the impact strength of the different encasements were. But it was for a kid, that was amazing to me. That I went from sort of failing my science class in the 8th grade to now working on a project for NASA with the Orthopedics Research Lab. It was fantastic. It was really inspiring. That's probably why I'm doing this show now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
those multi-touch experiences
Right.
that are so beneficial. Like, one really great experience can spark curiosity, but you need to foster that and really get people engaged. And that sounds like an awesome opportunity.
So that's one of my biggest struggles. It's not when they come to NASA, it's then you have to go back to the school.
Yeah.
And the question is, when you're getting advice on what to do next, does anybody care that you did all that at NASA or anywhere else? And how to make sure that that experience we're giving them is built into the student's education program, not an extraneous thing, because that's what turns them on, then they have to go back. So.
Yeah, and continuing to along this line, talking about Mars, and projects like that, have there been students involved in, say, the development of the James Webb Space Telescope that has been under
Absolutely.
development for a decade, right?
Every summer.
Every summer.
I have 450 to 525 interns at Goddard every summer.
Beautiful.
For 10 weeks.
Beautiful.
And they're all working on major missions. And the way we do that is in order to make sure the student has an interest to begin with. We don't have students apply for internships and then we take them grade point average, all that stuff.
You
And then
just
say,
go to the schoolyard
say-
and grab them and
we actually ask the mentors in the projects to define the jobs that a student would do. So when I say we have 500 interns, it meant 500 mentors wrote job descriptions. And those students applied for this and were selected for that. And
That's quite a process.
That's exactly how I ended up at that Orthopedics Research Lab. It was through the high school, and they had us do that same sort of thing. They had us do a list of tasks and jobs that we'd be interested in.
Right.
You know, and after compiling that, that's how I ended up at that gig. Yeah.
So for all the parents that are on listening, don't call me. What we do is say that kind of experience has to be arranged through the school. And the reason for that is, kind of one, the personal one, but two, good education, is to say everything that a kid gets should be part of his education program. And
part
parents,
and parcel with what the teachers
Right.
are working on.
and parents lobbying for experiences for their student. When we're complaining about the state of public education and what kids are and are not learning, we say, go to the school, get the school to arrange for the experience with us, because we know you know a lot of things that you would complain about the school for. When your son or daughter has a great experience with us, like we're talking about, we want you to remember it was because of the school and because of the teachers that happened, not in spite of them. I end running the system.
Yeah, that's a way to empower the school system
Right.
and
Absolutely.
to empower the teachers.
Right.
Yeah, and not take that, not take the educational pathway
Right.
away from them.
Away from them.
Yeah. So with the James Webb Telescope, is there a second one? Is there like the second secret James Webb Space Telescope in case one blows up?
Blows up. What's that mean?
I don't know. I mean, rockets blow up
What is-
all the time, and I just want to know that
They're those
NASA
commercial
has
things.
been working on the James Webb
They're those
Space
commercial
Telescope.
rockets.
I know, decades. I went to Goddard in 2006 or I don't remember. It was almost a decade ago. Or 7. It was many years ago. I went to Goddard for a science writers conference, and we went and we saw all the James Webb planning, and they showed us pieces of the cooling material, and they gave us information about the plans. But that was almost a decade ago. This is a project that is long in planning. It better not blow up on the launch pad or even in launch, right?
Absolutely.
Is there a plan B?
The concern isn't the concern isn't that. The concern is testing everything. When you think of the number of moving parts, first you're going to take something that when it's in space, when it gets there, it's going to be the size of a tennis court when
Right.
it opens up. Now think of the moving parts. Think of how you put that in a rocket.
And how
Including
the
all those
origami,
mirrors,
Quite a bit of
right?
origami.
including all those mirrors, right? And you say, so
And you don't want it to
testing
be
all
like
that.
the Hubble, where your mirror is warped or slightly broken when you
Right.
get up there,
So,
and
so
you have to
because-
fix it through math.
because you keep telling those horror stories.
I
So-
do.
So I'm going to tell
Sorry.
you. So one on the Hubble. So you see this piece of paper? The problem with the Hubble telescope was an aberration that was 1/50th the
1/50th.
1/50th of this piece of paper.
1/50th the width of the
Caused
piece
the
of a piece of paper.
Wow.
That's a tiny aberration. That's a tiny aberration.
So it wasn't like the detail is extremely important, and that's why it's taking long because of the testing. Now they were just
It has
it's
to be
basically-
perfect.
It has to be.
It has to be
on
perfect when it
every
goes
level.
up.
The number of apertures are in hundreds of thousands of apertures in order to control being able to look back in space, right?
Yeah.
And they all have to work. Right? You take your camera and it's got an aperture, right? And they're
Yeah.
wafer thin. They're extremely thin.
Wafer thin.
So-
So Hubble has been an amazing teaching instrument. Do you expect that the James Webb Telescope, when it gets up there and it takes over as the next big space telescope in our repertoire, will it be as influential of a teaching
Absolutely.
instrument?
even more so, I think, because, well, for one, it's going to have more power than Hubble. It's a different system because
Right.
it's
It's looking in infrared, right?
rather than ultraviolet. It's I think 6 times larger telescope lens structure, and Hubble I think gets maybe 1,000 requests a year for people to use the Hubble telescope.
I was just gonna say if
That's-
you're just gonna toss it, maybe I
All
could
right.
I could have it.
I-
Yeah.
And,
It's
and
Hubble.
so that's why we don't talk about JW being a replacement for Hubble.
Hubble's still
because
gonna be-
it's of a different.
Still gonna
It's
be going.
different.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting thing going on at Goddard now. Now we have this concept of satellite servicing. So if you think of it, obviously costs billions to build like JW. We're now looking at how to in effect create a superhighway in space. So you have all these satellites that are up there, but the typical thing was they have a lifespan and then they burn up when they enter. We're now looking at satellite servicing, which means that would not be true. You would actually bring them in, just think of a superhighway in space like here, right? You'd bring them in to the equivalent of a space where you're
Service
gonna
A space service
them.
shop.
Service
Like a pit crew.
and
That's
you
right.
either refuel it or
Yeah.
whatever, you send it back out. And the reason it's kind of interesting to talk about it in terms of the highway system, because the complexity has to be, you have on ramps, off ramps, you get all
Yeah.
that, but it's going to be in space instead. And then that becomes important. Like James Webb is actually, Hubble is, I think, 357 miles above the Earth. When JW goes out, it's going to be placed 1,000,000 miles out in space.
Yeah, the space station crew is not going to be able
Right.
to help with that at all.
It goes out 1,000,000 miles and then opens, and then
What does 1,000,000 miles even look like?
yeah.
Well,
Can't even-
it's only 50 miles up to get weightless.
To get to
so
space.
Yeah.
Space is
So a lot
really
more than
a lot
that.
closer than people think.
Yeah.
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 And I think that somebody was saying that John Mather, the Nobel laureate, was James Webb Telescope, if you took the distance from the Earth to the moon, that distance, the Webb Telescope could detect the heat of a bumblebee at the moon.
That's intense. That's
I love stuff like that. I love stuff like that. Somebody verify that.
So that, the precede, but that's like the hair, because
The hair.
if you get any aberration on a telescope, you see,
Not gonna work.
it
Yeah.
ain't gonna work. So anyway,
Yeah, but these are such inspirational ideas, and the James Webb Telescope, I mean, high school students and graduate students now are going to be the people asking to use those telescopes,
Right.
to the James Webb Telescope, to use it for time, for observations, to, there is a generation of kids coming into high schools now who are going to start working on the next generation of space
Right.
telescopes and observatories. And so all of this looking out into space, looking deeper into our own planet, the educational opportunities and the inspirational opportunities are vast.
Yep.
Thank you so
now,
much for your
for the students you're talking about, anybody listening,
Yes.
remember, one of you is probably going to be the first Martian.
And if you would like to be the first Martian, please talk to your teacher about an internship at NASA.
That's right.
That'd be a long internship. Yeah.
No, I do love this. Yeah, it's the whole John Dewey way of training, or of schooling, where you get active participation in the projects.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time
yeah,
today, Bob.
right.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right, everybody. This is This Week in Science, and we are going to take a short break, but it's not really a break. We're just going to play some music, and then I'm going to tell people about how they can support TWIS. So, you want to play a little bit of music? Mm-hmm. This is This Week in Science. We are going to be back with more. No? Don't move. Yep. All right, everybody. Head on over to TWIS.org in order to pre-order a 2017 TWIS Blair's Animal Corner calendar. Last year, Blair produced a wonderful calendar with her original artwork, and she is doing it again. 12 individual, unique, hand-drawn or
This is painted and cut.
painted and
Yes.
cut. There we go. We've got layers of art happening in this.
It's some mixed media.
Mixed media, that's the terminology. Art. Okay. Blair features a different animal every month of the year, and there are loads of science holidays for you to celebrate throughout the year. Don't forget TWIS.org. You can head on over, click on the calendar link, and pre-order yours today. Get it before the end of the year, right? You need a new calendar for 2017. Let's do that. TWIS also has merchandise that you might enjoy. Head over to twis.org to buy some of this stuff if you want to support us and have your logo emblazoned on your hat, for instance. Yes, there's an audience member wearing a TWIS hat. I love it. So if you go to twis.org, our website has a link to our Zazzle store, zazzle.com/thisweekinscience. So if you head there, click on the Zazzle link, you'll be able to scroll on through, find lots of items that are Twisty. Maybe you can buy somebody a Twistmas present right now.
Yes. This is one of my favorites, the tie.
The twist tie. Some of the art is from the 2016 Blair's Animal Corner calendar, so there's some pretty great stuff in there. Pretty cool things. Super sciencey. Support TWIS and also share the love of your favorite podcast. If it's not merchandise, TWIS is also supported by listeners through your donations. Your donations pay for our hosting, our bandwidth, contractors that we need to hire to do things like fix our website and stuff like that, and other fun things that we try to do for this show. Any amount you can give, whether it's $1, $100, any amount helps us keep the show going. Basically, you are the producer behind our production. When you support us financially, you allow us to continue doing what we're doing on a weekly basis, and even to try and expand our operations. And we accept donations a couple of ways. Through our website, TWIS.org, we have PayPal donation buttons on each show page, and additionally, you can also donate through Patreon, which is a crowdfunding website, Patreon, patreon.com/thisweekinscience, and it's a place where you can also get stuff like these buttons and stickers and t-shirts and stuff. If you support us on Patreon, all this could be yours. But if you can't afford a donation, that is absolutely fine. We understand, and we can always use your help in ways of sharing the show. So when you wear a TWIS t-shirt, for instance, maybe get in a conversation with someone about TWIS. Tell people about the TWIS podcast. Use social media. Share our most recent episode. Share our requests for support on Patreon. When you share us, you help us grow. And so in doing so, it is one of the most valuable ways that you can help us out. We thank you for your support. We really could not do any of this without you.
Sorry.
Methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. I couldn't see.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
All right, but I'm not going to ask you for a story, because you know what time it is really right now? It's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
Oh my god. It's ridiculous in person.
I know,
every
in
time.
person it's even more ridiculous. Jazz hands.
I'm a person with a theme song. That happened. Okay.
It did. What's in the Animal Corner, Blair?
Okay, I have a couple really fun stories. Well, the first one's actually not very fun. It's about one of my favorite things to talk about, climate change. I've talked a lot about how climate change. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, because I feel like we need to get the message out there.
All right. Fair
It's
enough.
not my favorite thing.
Fair enough. Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
So I've talked a lot about the impact of the changing climate in terms of warming waters, warming habitats, and things like that, moving animals. But I haven't talked a whole lot about ocean acidification, which is when the carbon dioxide gets absorbed by water. And so since we're at an aquarium today, I thought it would be an awesome topic for us to talk about for a moment. Recent research from University of Exeter shows that CO2 in waters actually causes some fish to swim towards predators.
Oh, that's awesome if you're a predator fish.
Right.
That's
so
perfect.
the CO2
I'm loving this.
yes,
I think you're
benefits some,
taking the
not
wrong
others.
Is that the wrong? Oh.
The carbon dioxide actually disrupts the senses of the fish. It bothers their smell, hearing, and vision. And instead of swimming away, they ignore the sounds or smells that normally deter them, and they swim right towards those pesky predators. It actually disrupts the brain processes. They don't know the exact mechanism yet, but most of this is from research in fish farms. So this is a good reminder that those fish farms that perhaps are sustainable are good opportunities to research long-term effects of things like carbon dioxide being absorbed into the waters.
Right.
So this was kind of an accidental finding from fish farms, which were the perfect captive population that they were able to look at over a long period of time with higher CO2. And so
Does higher CO2, it's accidental, did they find it because they were using higher CO2 for some reason? Does it help with growth of the fish, like faster, fatter salmon?
yeah, that's a good question. I think that it was actually just some research that they were doing at the fish farms, since it doesn't affect the product.
Yeah, right.
So they were able to see in a long-term study that it was affecting these things, and it's because they're looking at, it's kind of a vested interest because certain fish farms want to show that there's a benefit to their existence, right? So this is kind of a double whammy. They get to provide food and they get to provide research from that food as it's raised. So as long as they're using sustainable practices and things aren't entering the waterways from these fish farms that shouldn't be, that is a great way to help kind of both sides of the coin, is to not deplete the wild fisheries, but also to use these fish farms as research facilities.
Yeah, and maybe those fish could be our fishy canaries to let us know
Exactly.
what's going to happen.
Yeah, and
Eventually,
they
yeah.
did also, so a lot of this research was based on the fact that for some fish, like you're saying, CO2 is a stimulant for growth. So they wanted to see what levels of CO2 were kind of the sweet spot for farming, but also this was to help kind of predict impacts on wild fisheries.
Prediction also seems to be that we're going to need more fish farms in the future.
Yes, which again, as long as they're
convenient.
sustainable, use your Seafood Watch app, everybody, and be careful, especially in these towns that have amazing fish to eat that I'm looking forward to eating all of this evening.
All the fishes.
All the fish and crustaceans. I will be
fishes.
doing my best to eat sustainably.
Blair has taken up the challenge. She's gonna have every meal is gonna have some kind of seafood while she's here. She's not gonna eat anything that's or shellfish.
I
even.
said shellfish.
Shellfish
Yeah.
on
Because
with every
San
meal.
Francisco is not
Oh,
close
no.
to a body of water.
Anyway.
Moving on, next story,
I have
please.
one more story from the oceans. I feel like a couple of you will really appreciate this one. So, a study from Duke University and Smithsonian Institution found midwater hyperid amphipods. So, our good friends the amphipods, they
These
have
are like water fleas, right?
Yes, they have an amazing way of being completely invisible in water. So there are amphipods from very deep light, deep down with very little reflection. So they have anti-reflective surfaces, but these ones are actually midwater, and they have a special coating on their legs that dampen the reflection of light by 250-fold. And this makes them basically invisible, specifically to lanternfish, which are their main predators. And it appears, this is not confirmed yet, but it is hypothesized that this coating on their legs is made out of living bacteria.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they haven't confirmed this yet.
So they looked in an electron microscope, they looked at the coating, and it is a uniform beaded structure, smaller than the wavelength of light. They reduce the reflection the same way putting a shag carpet on walls of a recording studio softens echoes. So
I like the analogy.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But they also are connected with a net of filaments that look like biofilm. And each of the 7 amphipod species that they looked at have their own species of symbiotic optical bacteria. But they have not confirmed this with genetic testing, which is how they're going to figure it out.
Symbiotic optical bacteria. So they have bacteria for seeing,
Yes.
and they might have bacteria for not being seen.
Correct. So they have to perform in-depth sequencing to make sure that this is all bacteria related.
Yeah, the bacteria just don't want to get eaten.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
It has
Yeah.
nothing
The
to do
seafood
about
Not
is
my
just-
ship.
Yeah, it's just the ship.
Yes.
That's not what. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So if it's alive, this means that there's something that originally brought this bacteria to these amphipods. It's pretty easy to understand how the seeding would happen as throughout their life, because even though they shed their shells,
Their exoskeleton.
right?
Yeah.
It's easy to continue holding that bacteria because they're touching themselves the entire time they're shedding off that shell, right? So they could very easily keep the bacteria once they have it. But how does each individual species, or how did that symbiotic relationship originate? It's pretty interesting. And
How did any symbiotic relationship originate?
yeah.
I mean, it's like Richard.
It's a good question.
It's like a Rudyard Kipling tale, you know,
Yeah.
or like just so stories of.
yeah. My favorite part of this is that some of these amphipods are up to 6 inches in length, and the lead researcher said that mostly you see them because you don't see them. When you pull up a trawl bucket packed full of plankton, you see an empty spot in the bucket, why is nothing there? You reach in and you pull out one of these amphipods. It's like a firm cellophane bag. So
There's nothing there. I guess I'm gonna grab that spot. That's
So
crazy.
obviously there's
Interesting. Fascinating.
lots of ways we could apply these things.
Oh,
to-
I'm sure. As soon as engineers get a hold of this light dampening, reflectance dampening method, however it's bacteria or whatever, how are the bacteria if it's bacteria? If it's nanoscale, it's something that very tiny scale that is dampening reflectance. And how does that work? As soon as engineers get their minds wrapped around it, it's going to be put on some military device.
So this sounds like the origin story of
Or-
the
or we
Invisible
could just-
Woman.
Right.
Fill the
Right.
bay
The
with it.
invisible woman is coated in bacteria.
Yeah. I think it'd be great.
That's actually
The invisible woman was raised by amphipods.
Yes.
No. Oh dear. At least maybe her plane was built by amphipods. All right, you guys. This is This Week in Science. Now, there's this crazy story that's out. That is out of Hawaii that I think ties into our next guest very well. It's been found that there's a previously unknown component to whale song. Whale song. Wow. Who saw Finding Dory, right? We've all heard whale songs. But they are pressure waves where under the water, when they sing their songs, there's pressure waves that move through the water, actually physically move the water, and it's like pressure waves through the air move the bones in the ears and allow hearing to take place. And they, for years, have thought that over distance, this is the sole component of whale song because they've been using hydrophones, which can really only detect pressure waves. Well, some researchers off the Hawaiian island of Maui used some different equipment, and they discovered that there's also particle motion. So there's actual physical motion. So the analogy of this is when you drive up and to a stoplight and a car pumping the bass really loud next to you hurts your ears. The pressure wave is what is hurting your ears, but the particle motion is what's vibrating your seat. And so they used a different recording device, and they were able to determine that there's particle motion for as far away as like 200 meters from groups of whales. And particle motion may, in fact, vibrate the bones in the whales' heads. And so there could be low-frequency communication over long distance due to this particle motion, as well as the pressure waves of the actual song. And so there's a whole new component to whale song and the movement of sound through the water
So
for whales
it
to
would be
study.
like having Bluetooth.
It's
You know,
like having
a little-
Bluetooth.
like you
That's
just-
right.
Wow.
That's right. But it could be like additional information. It's like an additional information channel
Yeah.
that we haven't even seen before. And in the light of talking about sound and acoustic waves, I'd like to invite our next guest onto the show, Shodekeh. Please join us. Shodekeh he's a Baltimore musician, vocal percussionist. He has, you might know the term beatboxer. He's a beatboxer, but a much more interesting style than what you would typically think of as a beatboxer. So Shodekeh, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into beatboxing and vocal percussion, how you moved it to your artistic style that
Okay.
you're doing now?
Ooh, this mic's a little hot.
It's hot.
Okay, so I'm actually in my 30th year of being able to do beatboxing and vocal percussion, and I first started in about the year 1986 or so. So as a kid, I was already doing sounds of my toys and my transformers and my cars, and basically just illuminating my world of imagination through sound, like stuff like that. Just, we all did that as kids, right?
Not quite like
Anyway,
that.
maybe. Okay. So I saw the classic hip hop film from 1986, from 1985 actually, the movie Crush Groove. I saw it on cable the following year, that summer, and through that exposure, through Buffy the Human Beatbox, who appeared in the film with the Fat Boys, I found that there is a musical language in which I could already apply what I was doing to a more musical foundation. So that's when I started to bring in percussive sounds and just exploring the world of imagination from a kid's standpoint of beatboxing. So, and just never stopped ever since. So.
So do you think you still have a kid's perspective?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, what are you doing now, or what have you been doing? I mean, you have founded a music festival here in Baltimore called the Embody Festival.
Yes.
And then, can you talk about that and also how that ties into what you're doing musically these days?
Right. Okay. So, I have a voice and music series called Embody, which focuses specifically on the voice as an instrument, no matter the genre, the tradition, or the scientific vocal technique. So it serves as a unifying platform for everything related to the voice that's usually pretty musically segregated. So opera singers, beatboxers, whistlers, throat singers, experimental vocalists, and we give them one of two platforms. One in which they can demonstrate what they already do on its own terms, and then a more fused platform or approach in which these different styles can get together and experiment in the moment and create something new. So
that's fun. And so, additionally, like, what are you doing with your musical styles and experimenting and trying new things?
Right. Okay.
Pushing
so
the boundaries of vocal percussion.
through that medium of Embody, and then just again a kid's standpoint or viewpoint of exploring different ways the voice can be used as an instrument. I've been incorporating more styles of specifically Tuvan throat singing, working very closely with the group Alash. They performed here a few times over the years in Baltimore at the Walters. They were at the TED conference earlier this year over at Morgan State. And so that's been really impacting my beatboxing. Also, I'm a musical accompanist in residence at the Towson University Department of Dance, and I'm starting to incorporate more dance into what I'm already doing, beyond being an accompanist or a composer for dance. So yeah, most of what I do exists within this head kinesphere, right? This vocal kinesphere, but I'm starting to explore expanding what I'm doing as a beatboxer throughout my full kinesphere, the full body space. You know, right now I'm in my own kinesphere, now I'm into your kinesphere a little bit, back into my own kinesphere. So most of my energy comes from the inner core of my kinesphere. I'm starting to explore through dance and movement while vocalizing a fuller reach into the outer limits of my kinesphere. So yeah, those are the two things that are impacting what I'm doing as a voice scientist or musician right now.
So can we get a demonstration, and I know you have a video to show of
Yes,
some
okay.
actual science, observational science that you've
Okay.
been doing. I'd love
Right.
to get going on this site,
Okay.
bring the science into it.
Got you. So the science is already there. So I'm going to go over to that microphone to my left, and basically I'm going to give you an external demonstration of the music, science, and the art of, and some movement elements of beatboxing, and then we're going to segue right into a endoscopic internal look at the musical kinesiology, vocal kinesiology of beatboxing and vocal percussion. So a quick
He got a laryngoscope down his nose to look at his vocal cords, and so we're gonna look at that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
So for the squeamish, prepare yourselves. Some of you all
Prepare.
already saw a little bit. So a quick 1 or 2 minutes on our microphone on the left, and then I'll come back around and we'll get into the video.
Yeah.
All right.
This is so much fun. You guys didn't expect science of music today. What?
you can teach us all how to do that?
By golly, yes, I can. I can teach you all some basic elements of vocal percussion because, vocally speaking, scientifically speaking, language can't exist without elements of vocal percussion, right? Those core elements of vocal production that gives us access to language. So we're using it all the time, just not mostly in a musical sense. So with that said, now, are you ready for the real stuff? Okay. So in 2008, I was at a conference, an all-day conference called the Music in the Brain over at the American Visionary Arts Museum. This was during the exhibit of The Marriage of Art, Science, and Philosophy. I was a panelist with Dr. Charles Lim. He used to be in residence at Johns Hopkins. And he was conducting research on what occurs within the human brain, neurologically speaking, when they're listening to improvised music and when they're playing improvised music. Jazz musicians, MCs, rappers. He brought me in as a beatboxer as part of that research. So also beyond putting me in an MRI scanner, we also conducted a endoscopic exploration into what occurs internally with the kinesiology of beatboxing at Johns Hopkins Hospital. So yeah, I did this crazy thing for art and science, and might do it again. Oh, yuck. Oh. You see all those hairs?
Almost there. Okay. Yeah, so we're just looking at your nasal pharynx.
This is where the squeamish people get to be squeamy.
Swallow.
We're almost to the vocal cords.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Are we still there?
Yeah.
Kinesiological empathy.
Serious, this is some neuroscience.
Yeah, that's your voice box.
So I'm just gonna go down the list.
Alright. You want to take a minute to get ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if you want me to pull this back a little bit. Right now I got a good view.
I think we're okay.
Slow breathing through your nose is going to settle you down. And remember to kind of shake those shoulders and relax those shoulders. It's going to put you in more normal posture.
So epiglottis,
Alright, sleigh bells.
larynx.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Shodekeh and I have an endoscope going through my nasal passage. Just one of the weirdest sensations ever. I'm gonna go through this list of sounds here. A little bit of background on what I do. Professional beatboxer, living and working in Baltimore, working abroad as well. An internal look at the technology of bodily instrumentation, specifically with beatbox and vocal percussion. Sleigh bells. Wind. Waves. Helicopter. Yuck. Motorcycle. A little bit of drool there. Turntable. Didgeridoo. guitar. Bass. Congas. Shaker. Hi-hat. Varying snares.
How we all doing? We okay? All right, we're good. We're good. Okay, we're all here. So what's for lunch? I don't know.
Sir.
So that's what the inside of your vocal apparatus looks like when you're doing all these different sounds. That it support the anatomy supports the sounds in very different ways.
That's right, yeah. There's this term that's used in dance and in movement. It's called proprioception. Have you all heard of this term? A few? Okay. It's basically the bodily sixth sense.
Where you are in space.
Where you are in space as you travel through space and through time as well. So this is an example of what I refer to as vocal proprioception. I don't have a visual frame of reference, so I really have to know and practice and study constantly, all the time, the music and the science behind everything that's doing here. Most of it's been through access of intuition, and over the course of 30 years and then doing it professionally for 10 years, I've been able to find the scientific language that just reveals itself over constant practice, and I think that stands to be true for just about any study or practice, but yeah.
Awesome. So can we get, now I want to see all of it. So at the end of this video, or did you want to do some more demonstration?
Okay, so this part's fun. I know one person here at the aquarium said it's really weird to see the actual person on the external one, but then also to see this internal. So to freak you all out a little more, what I'm gonna do is actually perform in real time with this footage. So you'll get to see me on the external and on the internal. It's like a mirror into oneself from the movie Hellraiser or something. I don't know what this is, but that's what we're about to do. So yeah, let's try that.
You ready?
I'm ready.
I think that's good.
Thank you. Did you see the part where the endoscopic tube was extracted from the nose? Science is pretty awesome.
Science is awesome, and it can be really gross sometimes. No, it was really interesting to watch you just now try and follow yourself and capture the same beats and the same sounds so that we could see that. And that's got to, how is that as an artist trying to, I mean, you're watching your vocal cords to give you cues.
Right. It's really, it's very stimulating actually, because I think that was my best time doing this. I've had opportunities to screen this footage at other institutions, the Salzburg Global Seminar, Johns Hopkins, Towson University. I was just at the Community College of Baltimore County. So I've done this a few times, but I think that was my best one, just from the memory of seeing it and watching it over time. I think I'm still processing that experience. Ask me in about a year.
All right.
But I just thought it'd be an interesting idea to flip ideas of consciousness and self-reflection, but because this is illuminated from an internal standpoint, viewpoint. So it's fun. It's definitely fun.
But are you more aware of how you're constructing some of these sounds now, having seen this, like seeing what's going on in there, or is it? I mean, because you're not really that much in control, like mentally of okay, I'll move this part of my larynx to the ear.
Well, I think a lot of what we're seeing here are sort of kinesiological responses, not necessarily anatomical techniques or kinesiological techniques. Some of them definitely are. I think some of them are more responsive in nature. But then also, you have to consider that there's so much muscle memory that I've acquired and continue to reinforce all the time because my instrument is with me all the time. So I get to practice all the time. So this isn't really, not yet, it's not really enhancing more extensive techniques, but it is enhancing my capacity to speak to it extensively through science and through the language of science. And this sort of thing, all this, it's inspiring me to use beatboxing as a tool for science communication in general. So it's definitely enhancing my capacity to engage with audiences rooted in science.
Thank you so much for.
Oh yeah, am I done?
We're running to the end of
Oh,
our
we're on to the
time,
okay. We're
but-
done. I'll show some more later. Okay.
Yeah. Can we get maybe one last? Can we get one last before
Okay,
you
so
go?
yeah, a little fusion of the beatboxing and the overtone singing.
Yes, the Tuvan throat singing.
Inspired by Tuvan throat singing.
Yes.
This is basically multiphonic singing in which we all speak in multiple wavelengths all the time. So basically with throat singing, we're constricting so that you're hearing just a few, and once maybe 2, 3, or 4. It's basically like seeing a rainbow after a storm. So here we go. Thank you.
And you've performed and your music is on an album now. Can you tell everybody if they're interested about the album that you're on?
Yeah, this would be of interest to you too as well. So I've had the chance to travel to Tuva, the southern Siberia, over the course of the last 4 years, twice, once in the winter and once in the summer, to work with Alash, one of the best throat singing ensembles in the world right now, traveling all over. I've appeared on their most recent album entitled Achai. I've had the chance to travel at the Tuvan Cultural Center that Alash is in residence, and actually they have it's called the International Hume Science Center, which is dedicated to the language and the science of throat singing and overtone singing in the Tuvan tradition. So yeah, look that up, the Tuvan Cultural Center, Alash. Their website is alashensemble.com, and you can have access to the third album that I have featured on, 3 songs I'm featured on. Thank you, everybody.
And how can people find you?
Oh, right. Okay, right. I have a music page on Facebook. You can find me on, and my name is spelled Shodekeh. And also you can find me through Embody, a festival and series of the vocal arts. Also, we have our own music presence on Facebook.
Nice. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for illuminating our show. All right, everybody.
For those of you who are just listening, Shodekeh just left in a helicopter.
This does bring our show to an end. I do want to give some shout outs to people, our guests. Thank you so much to Laura Bankey, to Bob Gabrys, to Shodekeh, and to the Maryland STEM Festival for bringing us here, to the National Aquarium for hosting us, and to our live audience today. Thank you so much for coming and being here, joining us today. If you are around in town, we are having a meetup at 6 p.m. at Zella's Pizzeria, if anyone's interested in joining us. All right. Also, if you are in the Maryland area, don't forget to check out the rest of the events taking place as part of the Maryland STEM Festival. The Maryland STEM Festival is going on for the next 10 days, and it is packed with amazing events. We've talked about them before. I had interviews on previous shows. NASA, NSA, robots, libraries. It's all over the state, and it's going on for the next 10 days. Go to marylandstemfestival.org to be able to find out more information. Find an event near you and go check it out. All right, time for the Patreons. Thank you for your support on Patreon, and I would like to thank our Patreon supporters. Chris Clark, who's here. Hello. Paul Disney, G. Burton Lattimore, John Ratnaswamy, Richard Onimus, Byron Lee, E.O., Jared Lysette, Ulysses Atkins, who's here, Kevin Parachan, Andy, Keith Corsell, Jake Jones, Dave Friedel, Mike McGraw, James Randall, Eric Schwab, Bob Calder, Mark Mazzaros, Ed Dyer, Trainer 84, Brian Hedrick, Layla, Marshall Clark, Charlene Hedry, Don Camarage. I have another one! Who's here? Don Camarich, Larry Garcia, Randy Mazuka, Tony Steele, Steve DeBell, Haroon Sarang, Melissa Mosley, Alex Wilson, Jason Schneiderman, Rudy Garcia, Greg Guthman, Dave Neighbor, Greg Guthman, who's here! Yay! Dave Neighbor, Jason Dozier, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, Jason Roberts, Richard Porter, Daryl Lambert, Rodney, David Wiley, Robert Aston, Felix Alvarez, Darwin Hannon, Cosmic Gypsy, Brian Hone, Orly Radio, Brian Condren, Pixelfly, Mark, Nathan Greco, Hexator, Deborah Smith, Mitch Neves, Flying Out, John Crocker, Christopher Dreyer, Ben Rothig, Sylvan Westby, Artyom Shuwata, Dave Wilkinson, Steve Mashinsky, Rick Ramus, Gary Swinsberg, Phil Nadeau, Braxton Howard, Salkin, Sam, Matt Sutter, Emma Grenier, Philip Shane, James Dobskin, Kurt Larson, Stefan Insom, Michael George, Russell Jensen, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Tara Payne, John Maloney, Jason Olds, James, Paul West, Alec Doty, Lumalama, Joe Wheeler, Dougal Campbell, Craig Porter, Adam Mishkan, Aaron Luthen, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, David Simile, Tyler Harrison, Columbo, Ahmed.
Next week, we're going to be doing that rundown with one of those things down your nose.
That's right. Thank you for all your support on Patreon, and if you are interested in supporting us, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Also, remember that you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. And on next week's show, we're going to be back doing our normal thing. Aww. Thanks for having us in Baltimore. This has been so much fun. But every week, you can catch us live online, 8 p.m. Pacific time at twis.org/live, where you can watch and join our chat room. And if you don't make that, don't worry, because we have past episodes at twis.org/YouTube. And also, you can just find the audio at twis.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile device, you can look for TWIS, the number 4 droid, in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
And for more information on anything that you've heard here today, including information on our interview guests, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org. There you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistmeaning@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here, not here though, we'll be back online next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And I forgot a shout out to Patrick Hartnett, who has found us a place to stay while we're here and gave us a wonderful dinner last night. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if he's learned anything over the last 24 hours, it's all in his head.
It's all in his head.
I forgot my job!
To do the music. And we're out. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
This week in science, it's the end of the world, so I'm setting